what I think we could be on the verge of here is a reckoning in the halls of Congress about how to treat the behavior of members, mainly almost exclusively men, and the way that they treat the young women that are in and around Capitol Hill.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. Today on the show, Congress is back in session with two fewer lawmakers, California Democrat Eric Swalwell and Texas Republican Tony Gonzalez. They're giving up their seats in the face of searing allegations of sexual misconduct. Why this may not be the end of the investigation. And Israel and Lebanon met for high-level talks in Washington, their first in more than 3 decades, what it could mean for peace in the region. Up first, though, we're going to start on Capitol Hill. Congress has been on recess for 2 weeks, and they rejoin with a lot of unfinished business to take care of. There's the longest partial government shutdown, which we're still in, the war in Iran, and some major scandals. Representatives Eric Swalwell and Tony Gonzalez, both facing serious allegations of misconduct, announcing independently on Monday that they would be leaving the Hill. Now, Gonzalez had been under a House Ethics Committee investigation for a few months. He had previously admitted to having an affair with a staffer who later died by suicide. While he'd pulled out of his reelection bid, Gonzalez had held on to his seat until last night. Representative Swalwell's case was relatively new. Since last week, at least 4 women have made serious allegations of sexual assault and misconduct against the congressman. But comments from other lawmakers suggest that these allegations may not have been so shocking after all. So how is this going to play out when it comes to these departures? And how is it going to affect Congress going forward, especially with a packed agenda? For this, I want to bring in NBC News Chief Capitol Hill Correspondent Ryan Nobles. Hey, Ryan.
Hi, Yasmin. How are you?
Good. So I want to start with Representative Eric Swalwell. He spent 13 years in the House. He was running for governor in California and was the front runner to succeed current Governor Gavin Newsom. After these allegations came to light, he denied them initially. Then he dropped his bid for governor. And then yesterday evening, I should say, he resigned his House seat altogether. Talk about the timeline here, if you can, Ryan, and describe for me the pressure that Swalwell was facing.
Yeah. So, I mean, first, let's talk about the timeline. And I think that you're seeing a lot of members of Congress, you're seeing a lot of journalists that are coming out and saying that there were always these rumors about Eric Swalwell and inappropriate behavior with women. And I can say that from my perspective covering Capitol Hill, I'd also heard of rumors. But rumors are not things that you report. And rumors make it very difficult to move that ball forward. And so it doesn't surprise me that this didn't really become a thing until the brave women who claimed to have been abused by him came forward and told their story. And the big difference between the rumors that were in the background of Eric Swalwell's career for almost the entire decade plus that he was in Congress versus the rumors that started to bubble up online leading up to this weekend to where we find ourselves now with him no longer a gubernatorial candidate and no longer a member of Congress is that you've had at least 4, potentially 5 or 6 women come forward and tell very specific stories of abuse and have receipts to back it up. There were a lot of Eric Swalwell supporters who were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because he is personally a charming individual who probably convinced people that these were just rumors. Now, when presented with these accounts from these women, some of which were willing to go on camera and tell their story, it just became an undeniable situation. And he certainly has the right and the ability to defend himself and provide his side of the story. But I think as a candidate and as a member of Congress, that became an untenable situation. He was staring down the barrel of an ethics investigation and a possible expulsion in Congress. He clearly did not want to deal with that. So that's why I think you saw him exit the governor's race and then exit Congress shortly after.
Let's talk about the allegations, Ryan, that he is facing. Because you say these women told their story. They didn't just tell their story. They went to social media influencers, right? This story also, their stories spread like wildfire. He's facing allegations ranging from inappropriate text messages to sexual assault as well. I want to read for you from his resignation statement. He says, "I am deeply sorry to my family, staff, and constituents for mistakes in judgment. I've made in my past. I will fight the serious false allegation made against me. However, I must take responsibility and ownership for the mistakes I did make. What do we know specifically about the accusations, and what can we glean from his statement where he both defends himself and then also takes, quote unquote, as he puts it, responsibility?
So the most serious allegation, and I think really the allegation that took this over the top, the story that was told by one of the accusers to the San Francisco Chronicle, and then later CNN had a very similar version of that story. We have independently confirmed who this individual is. We would not name her, and we know that she worked for Swalwell during this period of time. But she described multiple sexual encounters with Swalwell that happened while he was her boss, while he was a member of Congress, which is a direct violation of House rules, but then described two different instances where they were involved in a sexual situation in which she described herself as too intoxicated to consent. And that's assault. And in some jurisdictions, that could be defined as rape. And I think that was a bar that was way too far for anyone in the Democratic Party to continue to support Eric Swalwell. And he has not explicitly explained his side of that story. He's not said whether or not he viewed the interaction as consensual. He's not even said whether or not it happened. He's just saying that it's false. And then, but then at the same time, does kind of admit to these mistakes. He doesn't describe which mistakes he is alluding to, and he didn't really make any effort to explain himself. And I think that the path he chose was just to take himself out of the fray.
So we had a twofer yesterday because I mentioned this earlier. Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez also announced his retirement yesterday. And he had previously planned to return when his term was up, but he faced his own ethics investigation over misconduct. Is there anything to read into here, the timing of his resignation? Was he now under pressure to leave because of Swalwell subsequently resigning as well?
I think what happened here was that the spotlight on this kind of overall issue of sexual misconduct among members of Congress was bubbling. It's been percolating for quite a while. Gonzalez was at the forefront of it. And I think what Gonzalez saw was that the fact that there was a Republican and a Democrat caught up in this, that was going to provide cover for both parties to say, let's throw them both out. And that there was a real possibility that there would have been dual expulsion resolutions on the floor, maybe as soon as this week. I mean, the other thing to keep in mind about this, Yasmin, is the second they're no longer members of Congress, those ethics investigations go away. So it's not going to stop any future criminal proceeding for either guy, but a House ethics investigation to go through that whole process and have that report be revealed, that is a lot of your own personal business that'll be out there to the world.
Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, he was on ABC this week. He said, and I quote, he tried to get rid of Swalwell 6 to 8 years ago. He was then subsequently asked as to whether or not this was about the sexual misconduct allegations. Here's some of what he said.
Every member in Congress knows not to let any young staffer get around Swalwell or Matt Gaetz. It's not a secret there. There's a reason why you didn't want those two people around.
We should note, by the way, that former Congressman Matt Gaetz has denied allegations of sexual misconduct. But again, it wasn't lawmakers that brought these accusations to light. As you and I have already talked about, it was congressional staffers, it was social media influencers, right? So if this was some kind of open secret about Swalwell's behavior on the Hill, why did it take them coming forward to bring this to light?
Yasmin, it's a great question. It's one that I don't have an answer to. But what I do believe is happening, and what I think we could be on the verge of here, is a reckoning in the halls of Congress about how to treat the behavior of members, mainly almost exclusively men, and the way that they treat the young women that are in and around Capitol Hill. And I think one of the reasons that I believe a reckoning is coming is because there is a growing number of female members of Congress, both Republican and Democrat, who feel empowered to stand up and say, we're done with this, who are sick and tired of the kind of insular nature of members of Congress protecting their own, kind of, shielding the worst eggs in the basket to try and protect the overall body. There is a real belief, I think, a real movement now to say, if you're involved in this kind of behavior and there's a credible allegation against you, it needs to come out into the light and you need to be held accountable. Now, what that accountability looks like, that remains an open question.
Ryan Nobles, thank you.
Thanks, Yes.
This afternoon, another woman, Lana Drews, came forward alleging that Eric Swalwell drugged, raped, and choked her in a California hotel room back in 2018. Her attorney says she's filing a police report in Los Angeles. In a new statement from Swalwell's attorney, he, quote unquote, categorically and unequivocally denies each and every allegation of sexual misconduct and assault that has been leveled against him. The war with Iran has a number of fronts, and one of the biggest is not even in Iran, it is in Lebanon. That is where the Iranian proxy group Hezbollah is based. And since the start of the war, Hezbollah has been attacking Israel in solidarity with Iran. The IDF says Hezbollah has launched more than 6,500 rockets, missiles, and drones towards Israel. Israel has fired back and carried out an intense ground invasion, displacing more than 1 million people inside Lebanon. Today, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, hosted peace talks between Israel and Lebanon to try and hammer out a ceasefire. But Hezbollah, which, by the way, is not party to these negotiations, has said they're not going to abide by any agreements that come out of these talks. So how much progress can we really expect here? So for that, I want to bring in NBC News national security reporter Gordon Lubold. Hey, Gordon.
Hi, Yes. How are you?
I'm good. This is a rare moment, right? There are no diplomatic relations between Israel and Lebanon. They have not had these high-level talks in over 3 decades. What do we know has come out of the talks that took place today in Washington?
Yeah, so this is a big negotiation, but as Secretary of State Marco Rubio was making a point to say, is this is not a one-off event. This is a process attempting to manage expectations about what could be achieved in one day or even a couple of days. So I think that we'll kind of see, I think the talks were reasonably positive. I think they were productive from what we're hearing out of the State Department today. But there's not there's certainly no definitive finding from the talks yet that we know of.
So, Gordon, last week, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he said he didn't want to talk with Lebanon. Then there was this about-face, something changed, and here they are in the United States speaking Israel and Lebanon. Do we know what changed and what they are now zeroing in on, what the objective is here of these talks?
So I think we have to look at the Israeli Hezbollah situation in the broader context of the U.S.-Iran conversation and negotiation. As listeners know, Vice President J.D. Vance went to Pakistan to have this kind of historic meeting with the Iranians over ending that conflict. The conflict between Israel and Lebanon is a piece of that. I think the political winds in Washington dictate that Bibi Netanyahu, who is credited or blamed for getting President Trump this deep into the conflict in Iran, needs to be open to changing the tone and looking for a path toward negotiation with Hezbollah. And so there is implied pressure, if not direct, from President Trump on Netanyahu to figure out how to get the broader peace deal that I think President Trump wants, a lot of people in the U.S. want. And so I think what's changed is the kind of political realities for Bibi Netanyahu in Israel from the U.S.
From the president directly picking up the phone to Benjamin Netanyahu and saying, you got to tone it down.
I need a deal. I think we kind of know that we're long past the 6-week mark, which was his kind of what we, I think, all knew, and he said publicly, and Caroline Leavitt at the White House have said, like, that was the kind of time frame, and we're long past that. So I think we know that President Trump is, running out of his own runway, political runway, to prosecute this conflict.
So the thing is, Israel and the Lebanese government are negotiating in the United States. Hezbollah is not there. And Hezbollah has said they are not going to abide by any agreements that are made in this meeting, in this negotiation in Washington, D.C. So how much influence does the Lebanese government have over Hezbollah? How can they trust that anything could get done, could change because of this agreement without Hezbollah there?
It's a great question. It's a central question. The Lebanese government has some leverage on Hezbollah, but the real leverage comes from Tehran. And if there's enough pressure from Tehran to pressure its proxy in Hezbollah to find a path for negotiating, then I think there's a path to getting this broader negotiation between the U.S. and Iran to include Israel and Hezbollah to the point where they could maybe settle decades of conflict.
Let's talk about the bigger deal then, because you mentioned Lebanon is a sticking point. Iran has said Lebanon is included in this 2-week ceasefire. The United States and Israel has said it is not. We're not getting reports here at NBC that there is a potential second meeting that's going to happen to negotiate a permanent end to this war as early possibly as this week. If Israel and Lebanon cannot come to an agreement, could that spell trouble for a permanent end to the war between the United States, Israel, and Iran? Or do they also see it and are just not communicating to the world that this is a longer commitment to really negotiate an end to this thing?
So absolutely. I don't know how you cut a deal between U.S. and Iran without some kind of a ceasefire, extended ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah. But to be clear, while the Israel-Lebanon thing is important, between U.S. and Iran right now, I think the major sticking point is the Strait of Hormuz, which, as listeners know or may know, is being monitored heavily by U.S. Navy ships. Some ships are getting through, but not that many. And also the, Iranian plans for its uranium and what happens to that uranium. There's other issues too, but those are the kind of two big ones.
Do the sources that you are talking to tell you that the United States understands this could take longer than just this 2-week ceasefire? Or do they think they can get this done in the time frame they have laid out?
Anybody who's being pragmatic from the region, from inside the U.S., is trying to convey to the Trump administration this is not a simple thing. As we all know, President Trump is, author of the Art of the Deal, likes to make a deal. But deals don't happen overnight. And as we go back and look many years ago between the nuclear deal between the U.S. and Iran, shorthand is the JCPOA, that took some years to negotiate. President Trump's clearly not interested in any kind of negotiation that is that long. And maybe it doesn't need to take that long. But I think that they are people inside the administration and people from the region who well know that these kinds of deals do not happen overnight are trying to help the administration to manage expectations about what can be accomplished in what time frame. It's a little bit opaque to a lot of us in the cheap seats because you can't tell where exactly they are. But I think what was important about NBC's reporting was that the narrative that the talks kind of ended and didn't go well in Pakistan wasn't exactly true. I think what is true is they are still trying to figure out a way to get a deal.
Gordon Lubold, thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, that is going to do it for us. Here's the scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. We'll be back tomorrow with whatever the day may bring. And if you like what you heard and you saw, press the subscribe button. We'll see you tomorrow.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.